Think about the last time you started a new job. It could be that you started a new organization, or maybe your job transition, you got a promotion, shifted at your current company to where you were doing something a lot different with new people. What was that experience like? What are some of the feelings, thoughts that come to mind? You can probably think about some things that you did well, maybe some of those things you could adapt as you support people that are joining the organization now. And you can probably think of some setbacks, some challenges, things to avoid that again maybe you could apply to what you're experiencing. You might also think about others, partners, family members, close friends that have started a job and some of the things you heard there. One thing that we know, regardless of industry, regardless of where you're at in your career, the nature of the role, is that those first few months on the job carry a lot of weight. We have a lot of uncertainty. We don't know a lot when we're coming into a role, even if we've been through however many interviews, conversations, onboarding training. We still don't know a lot. We're really eager to build that sense of security in the sense that I know what I'm going to be dealing with on a day to day basis. I feel some sense of mastery over the role. So we tend to come to conclusions quickly, and those conclusions stick around. About a third of new hires will make the decision in the first few months that the organization is not the place for them, that they need to leave. And they might not leave in that first 3 months. They might stick around, but that belief and that idea and intention sticks. And we just are waiting for when it's going to happen, when we're not able to reverse it. So that gets me to the solution that I'm going to talk about with you today in the next few moments: realistic job previews. A realistic job preview is any sort of experience that tries to bridge the gap and provide greater certainty of what the job is going to be. So we're bridging that expectation reality gap. People are looking online, they're maybe talking to current employees, they're doing all sorts of things to try to have greater certainty of what the job is like when they're in the hiring process. And so an RJP can help to make sure that our expectations are reality, give us new things to think about that are useful, that prepare us. And the great thing about realistic job previews is that they're not a hard screening tool. So it's not going to tell someone that they cannot apply. It's simply going to say, here are some notable differences between what we're seeing about you and what the job expects. It could be on a number of different qualities. So I like to talk about the nuts and bolts. So the nuts and bolts could be things like the schedule, some of the basics of your job description, how often you're going to be moving around and on your feet if we're talking about a service role, travel, how long you might be in training, if there's any change in the pay during training to when you might be a full-fledged employee, even how long you might be expected to be at a certain role at a certain level until you get to move up. Anything like that. The great thing to think about when you're trying to decide what nuts and bolts to put in the realistic job preview is to just talk to hiring managers, people involved in recruiting, and what are those things that they're having to inform people of, talk about, what are some things you really like to emphasize. And yes, all of this could be in the job description, but we know people struggle to read and process information. And by putting it in an interactive survey, and I'm going to have a link where you can see some examples down below. By putting it in an interactive survey experience and giving them real time feedback as they answer those questions, we're going to start to digest it a lot more, process it. And if maybe I wasn't up for a job that needs close to full availability, I might still stick around, but I know that going in. It's definitely communicated to me. We also know that organizations right now, one of their biggest challenges, if not their biggest challenge, is standing out and keeping candidate attention. And not a lot of organizations have some type of interactive experience where candidates get to do a day in the life, answer questions, share their preferences, and get that real time feedback. If that seems daunting, a realistic job preview could just be something simple as putting together maybe a PDF that candidates could read or some website content that they're prompted to go through, just as a small step in that direction. But having an immersive experience can be so helpful. If that online experience isn't something that you're ready to take on, you could even have something that during the interview that is standardized, that the hiring manager or recruiter walks through. Okay, we expect this. We prioritize this. And here are some examples of our culture of feedback. So there's lots of ways you can do this, but having it be something that's consistent and perhaps even something that they can do on their own online as part of the hiring process is helpful. Another key point you might be thinking, okay, I can barely get candidates to complete the job application, or I have an assessment. Now you're tacking on this other piece. We see that once a realistic job preview is implemented, assessment completion actually increases. Again, it's all about that differentiating yourself. You're setting yourself apart, and you're also working to build trust because you're sharing, it's often said, the good, the bad, and the ugly about the job. You're sharing what's rewarding, engaging, what people like that maybe they didn't think about before. But you're also sharing the things that are going to be a little bit difficult that people often struggle with, and some of your expectations that again might be tough at times. So by doing that, you're again building that authenticity. You're setting yourself apart. You're showing the full picture, not just an Instagram highlight reel, right? So, in addition to the nuts and bolts of the RJP, you could also share some data or some social proof. And we've done this. If you've been doing, let's say, an employee engagement or satisfaction survey, or you have retention statistics that you can speak to, like maybe 80% of your new hires stay around at least a year, or 75% of people are either engaged or highly engaged. Why not put that in the realistic job preview? Give them some data, some social proof to boost and emphasize and substantiate what you're saying about yourself. Realistic job previews can also include real life situations. So, what are some scenarios that maybe people struggle with? It could be if you have a environment that's quick changing. We work with a lot of organizations where they're evolving their steps of service, their offerings, things are changing fast, right? And why not communicate that and see how someone responds? Or if you have a culture where you expect people to seek buy-in by others, and you're very careful about change, especially for a leadership role, that could be very useful to communicate that, like, we're cautious about change. We always bring people along with us. We seek the input of others, seeking to understand the core cultural tenets, showing examples of your values. There's so many meaningful things we can do there. So, what are some of the results? I mentioned that completion rates increase. We're also seeing from some of the academic research looking at nurses. So, when nurses choose what unit they're going to practice on, whether it's NICU, labor and delivery, emergency, med surge, when RJPs were implemented to help nurses make the best decision of what unit they wanted to work in, that unit to unit turnover and overall turnover decreased. So that's a pretty meaningful use case. And of course, another application could be if you're having people decide, where to go in something. This could help educate them about different decisions that they're going to need to make early on. There was also another study in the academic literature, and we'll make sure to have the links to the articles where we cite these down below, where it was found for caregivers that a realistic job preview reduces trauma post hire. So, just long lasting psychological strain that can happen from your work. By having a heads up of what the job was going to be like for some of those difficult jobs where you're dealing with hard things, it can be so helpful, and not just helpful, not just building retention, but also helping the person's well-being and health overall. We've also seen in some of our research, as well as others, job satisfaction, engagement increases during that critical period, those first 3 months that matter so much, by as much as 20%. And of course, like I said before, by building that trust and authenticity of sharing a full unfiltered version of yourself, authenticity, trust, all those key metrics also increase as well. So, with that, I hope this gave you some ideas of how perhaps you can make having an online realistic job preview part of your strategy for hiring, or even how you can incorporate pieces of this into something that's scalable, standardized, whether it's a document or something that candidates see online or something that you walk through in the interview. That's another powerful tool. If they're going through these questions and these scenarios, these are great things that could be tied into a structured interview of, hey, remember during the hiring process, you responded to those key situations. What did you think of this? Like when you were answering the question of how we take care of our guests, of our customers, how we work with one another. and insert, specific targeted question that they'll be exposed to. So they're primed, they've processed this information at a point where they have a lot of uncertainty, and it's just a wonderful thing to think about of how you can set your candidates up for success, where some of them are going to become new members of your team and ambassadors for your culture and carrying out your intended stakeholder experiences. If you have any questions, of course, we're always here and always delighted to talk with you about anything related to how you hire, develop, and build remarkable people and businesses.